Hi, this is what I was talking about earlier. The new neck system that's a bit more subtle. It doesn't shake anymore as much or at all, depending. Right now it's shaking a bit more than it should because it's hanging from the ceiling and I'm forcing it to shake. But see how fast it stabilizes? It used to actually shake like this when I was making him walk. This is unacceptable. It looks so bad. So tonight I decided to change it. I built this puppet in 2006 and yeah, I'm holding my microphone so that you can hear me. These things are garbage to record anything with. When you're broadcasting live, it's fine. These are blue snowballs. I recommend them if it's just going to be some quick webcam broadcasting or Skype conferences and stuff. They compensate for the sound automatically. But once you start recording, you have to hold it up to your mouth almost. So I have to boost it digitally when I'm recording. So that's a side note. Let's get back to the puppet. So now I can make it look up, down, tilt any way I want from one side to the other. I still have a little bit of hesitation between left and right turning, but it's not that bad. I mean, I'd rather have a little bit of hesitation like that than, you know, a lot of shakiness. So see how fast it stabilized? I just let it go, and it's just right now it's swaying because of the rope from the ceiling, because it's a very stretchy rope. But otherwise, really happy with this. I'll explain how I made it now. I was complicating things again, like human beings have a tendency to do. I think we have a gift or a curse about that. I think that's how we learn. It might be a reason why we learn so much, because we complicate first and simplify after. So I spent a few hours tonight trying to fix everything that was fixable on this puppet, especially the neck, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't find more information online or in books that I had or articles I saved specifically for that neck problem. So I decided to go simpler. That's what I do when I get stuck. How much simpler can I make it without, scrapping the whole thing? So I went back to the first puppet I ever built and finished. I built some before, but they were just prototypes and I never finished them. So the first puppet I finished, I still have. It's still going strong, and it was just a shoelace for the neck, which had been braided. Of course, these ones are bought braided, but I braided a shoelace, put a knot at the end, embedded that knot inside the head just by closing off the material of the head around the knot so it would never escape again. And I did the same for the torso, and it never came off. 16 years now, actually. It's been on tour in Canada once, throughout the country. It's been performing at puppet improv shows with kids, with adults. It's been through hell, and it's still going strong. So I'm impressed by the fact that it lasted so long, despite being my first puppet. And I decided, you know what, this one could benefit from the same kind of neck, but I couldn't do the whole thing exactly the same way because I don't have the same material anymore. This is epoxy putty for the head. I do have some, but it's not the same brand. I don't know if it's compatible. Probably is, but I didn't want to spend that much money on it. Never doing a full epoxy head like that anymore. It's not a practical, material to use for that kind of puppet. It's too heavy for the size, and it doesn't accept primers or paints very well. In my criterias, I mean, if you can scratch a paint job with your fingernails, to me that's not a proper paint job or a primer. So that's why I don't use epoxy for heads and hands anymore. So his head and his hands are made of epoxy, mostly. There's a wire armature in his fingers. I broke those fingers, or we broke those fingers several times during the filming of this puppet, which lasted a week. So I do not recommend epoxy for fingers, especially. Anyways, what I did as a hybrid between that first method I explained, like the captured knot, and this method, which has three parts, the neck is separate from the head and from the torso. I probably won't build those anymore unless I absolutely have to, because it's too complex. You don't really need that extra movement at the bottom. You could sculpt that neck as part of the torso and it would be just as good, or probably better, because you wouldn't have as much wobbliness forward and back. So what I did without modifying this too much, I just pierced an extra hole in the head, actually, from this side, but not poking completely through. It was thick enough on this side to host the end of the pin. So what I did is I used a T-pin to go through the head and capture this knot inside the head and keep it in place. Before I did that, of course, I melted the end of the rope so it wouldn't unravel like it's doing now. I put a bit of glue on the knot, but I did not wait for the knot to dry because it was going to be exposed anyways, and I didn't want it to be too difficult to poke with the pin inside. Once the pin was in place and I did my movement test because I installed it in the head like this and in the neck like this, the same way, until there was just enough space between the two parts so they would move sideways in all directions. You need to use a very supple flexible rope for this. You don't use the rough plastic kind. This is synthetic, but it feels soft to the touch and it's very strong. It's got lots and lots and lots of strands in there. It's all the same material. It doesn't have a cheap core in the middle like some ropes do. I don't like those for that sort of thing. So knot and no knot because the neck was too narrow. I just melted the end to make sure it wouldn't unravel, and I captured it with a second pin in the neck. I put drops of glue on both sides and paper mache strips on both sides to make sure it would never come off. Unless, of course, I scrape it off and I remove the pin, which is totally doable. I've done it before. So this is how I did this time. But I recommend not to do the pin thing if you don't have to, because again, if you embed your knot into the head itself and into the neck itself, we won't have a problem. The hole created by the pin will not enlarge. It will not get wobbly. I don't know if it will, but there's a chance that it might. So don't do that if you can avoid it. I just decided to restore this puppet. It's going to last a few years at least. That's what I care about. If it ever breaks, I will have learned that this is not going to work, and I will not do it again. But since I'm keeping it, I'm not selling that one because it's a it's a souvenir. It's a project I was proud of. It still am. So I'm keeping it. So I get to experiment with it, and I won't feel guilty. I don't send off a puppet to a customer that I'm not sure will last. That's one of my rules. So because I'm keeping this one, I'm taking this risk. But I wanted to share with you, not this exactly, but more like capturing the knot inside the head, inside the neck, or inside the torso if you don't have a neck, to get that universal movement. I've done it before for tabletop puppets, for other kinds of puppets, including Muppet style, as you may call them. Instead of using rope, in fact, I used the same fabric that was used on the skin of the puppet, if it was not fur. If it's fur, then I won't use it. I will actually use a rope. But if it's a stretchy fabric especially, then I'll use that to make a ribbon. Sometimes a ribbon I will sew to itself to make it thicker and more full of body. And then it will actually provide the joints, and they will look the same as the rest of the puppet, so it won't look weird. Like in this case, he's got an exposed torso, exposed legs, arms, and you can actually see the black thread, between his skin, and that's fine. We know it's a puppet. But if I didn't want to see that as much, I would use a rope over the same color of his skin. You could technically paint that, but it would get a bit stiff, and I don't like that. So just keep it simple. Try to find a braided line. I prefer braided because it's stronger. That will be close to the color of your character. But if you want a standard, black is still being used. It's been used for generations. Black seems to disappear in the mind of people watching your puppet, unless of course it's in front of something of your puppet. But between parts, I think it's totally acceptable. I actually like the style. But sometimes you don't want that, so you might want to use the skin of your puppet. I go on and on about other tips, so I'm going to stop myself right now. It was about the less shaky rope system for a neck, because I couldn't find that information online anywhere. Might as well put it out there myself. Thank you.